We have new details on Thomas Smith, a former employee at SafeMoon. He was arrested alongside that of John Caroni, the CEO. Now, Thomas Smith, also known as Papa, it appears that he is going for a plea deal. So we're going to talk about this more in this video. If you guys want to stay up to date with what's going on with SafeMoon, don't forget to hit subscribe. And you can also join my Telegram group. There's a link in the description. That's Team Crypto Atlas. With that being said, let's go ahead and dive right on into the news. So take a look here from David B. Smith. He posted saying conditions of release for Thomas. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Coming from the United States District Court, the Eastern District of New York, the United States of America versus Thomas Smith, the defendant, case number 23, looks like that's CR433EK. Order setting conditions of release and appearance bond release order. It is hereby ordered that the above named defendant be released subject to the conditions of release below and upon bond executed by the defendant in the amount of $500,000, which shall be co-signed by the financially responsible sureties identified on this bond, secured by collateral set forth on the appearance bond supplement. Conditions of release. It is ordered that the defendant's release is subject to the following conditions, which the court finds are the least restrictive conditions necessary to reasonably assure the appearance of the defendant as required and the safety of any other person and the community. Down here on line 7 says, as marked below, the defendant must also submit to partial supervision and report to pretrial services as directed. The defendant is subject to random home contacts and verification of employment as deemed appropriate to monitor compliance with the conditions of release. The defendant shall notify pretrial services as soon as possible of any arrests. Surrender any passport to pretrial services by blank and not obtain a passport or any international travel document. Do not leave the following areas except for travel to and from court. That's New York City for court. Also shows other, New Hampshire. Not have any contact with the following individuals, location, or entity. And it says victims and witnesses. And I can't read that one. Maybe confidential informants, except in presence of counsel. Undergo testing, evaluation, and or treatment for substance abuse as directed by pretrial service. Undergo evaluation and treatment for mental health problems as directed by pretrial services. Also has a side checkbox here, electronic device monitoring. Line K, surrender any firearms to in-laws. Must not access any digital currency wallets, digital assets, or digital tokens, either paper or electronic, and must not transfer any convertible virtual currency or direct anyone to do so on his behalf. Must not engage in any virtual currency purchases or sales. Must disclose any new accounts to PTS. So kind of going back here, lines 1 through 6, there's no checkbox on there, but these look to be part of the conditions. The defendant must appear in court as required and surrender as directed for service of any sentence imposed. The defendant must not commit a federal, state, or local crime while on release. The defendant must cooperate in the collection of DNA sample if it is authorized by 34 U.S. Code 40702. The defendant must advise the court in writing before making any change in residence or telephone number. The defendant must not possess a firearm, destructive device, or other dangerous weapon. Defendant must not use or unlawfully possess a narcotic drug or other controlled substance defined in 21 U.S. Code 802 unless prescribed by a licensed medical practitioner. Marijuana is still prohibited under federal law. So one of the things I also want to point out to you is the bond amount, as we had mentioned, that being $500,000. My understanding is that when you have these bond amounts, it's not something that you typically see being paid in full. I think it's about 10%. But even still, let's say it's $50,000. That's still a lot of money. And yeah, I get it. Like if they've been stealing this money and they've got a whole bunch of funds because of the stolen money and they're using that to try and pay this, then it gets a little bit more complicated, right? I'm wondering about the legalities behind something like that. Okay, so continuing on, this goes to say appearance bond. 1. The undersigned defendant and each surety who signs the bond acknowledge that I have read the order setting conditions of release and appearance bond and have either read all the other conditions of release or have had those conditions explained to me. If the bond is secured by collateral, complete appearance bond supplements. It has several signatures here. It goes on to talk about the release of the bond, the forfeiture of the bond, the advice of penalties and sanctions. And the release of the defendant is hereby ordered on November 3rd, 2023. Judicial officer's signature. Louis Bloom signs off on that. The defendant's signature looks like, I guess that's Thomas's signature there. Then we have docket number 23 CR 433EK. Defendant Thomas Smith, amount of bond $500,000. Checked boxes here we have for property, premises, securities, bonds, or other assets identified below. For any premises, the surety agrees to execute a confession of judgment, mortgage or lien in form approved by the U.S. Attorney's Office to be duly filed with the proper local or state authorities on or before November 17th, 2023. Property located at, owned by, that information is crossed out. And then some additional notes. It says no access to cryptocurrency or digital asset exchanges or trading platforms, shall not engage in any investment, promotional activities, no contact with current or former employees or contractors of SafeMoon US LLC or any of its subsidiaries and affiliates. And then it says addendum USA versus Thomas Smith. Now, one additional document, the plea deal. This is big. This right here, also posted by David B. Smith over on Twitter. United States District Court, Eastern District of New York, United States of America versus Thomas Smith. The United States of America and the defendant hereby jointly requests that the time period from November 3rd to December 6th of 2023 be excluded from the computation of the time period within which trial of the charges against defendant must commence. The parties seek the exclusion of the foregoing period because they are engaged in plea negotiations, which they believe are likely to result in a disposition of this case without trial, and they require an exclusion of time in order to focus efforts on plea negotiations without the risk that they would not, despite their diligence, have reasonable time for effective preparations for trial. The defendant states that he or she has been fully advised by counsel of his or her rights guaranteed under the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution, the Speedy Trial Act of 1974, 18 U.S. Code 316174, the plan and rules of this court adopted pursuant to that act, and Rule 50B of the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure, the defendant understands that he or she has a right to be tried before a jury within a specified time, not counting periods excluded. Then it has the signatures of defendant, U.S. Attorney, and counsel for defendant. It says, so ordered on November 3rd, 2023, and then the magistrate judge, Louis Bloom. So it appears that there is a plea deal that's coming in. Many people are speculating that he is flipping and he's going to be testifying against that of John Caroni, as well as likely Kyle Nagy. Some people are speculating that we're going to see John Caroni somehow flipping as well and trying to go after that of Kyle. Keep in mind, Kyle is still on the run. Things are not looking good for all three of them. And I'm very curious to see how this is going to play out, what the punishments are going to be for each individual, and if it's going to be different across the board. The fact that they're allowing Thomas Smith to go out on bail, whereas, and you know, they're saying that he can't get a passport. But for the release of John Caroni, let me go ahead and turn my webcam back on here. For the release of John Caroni, they're saying, no, we can't let him out because he's a significant flight risk, and he's potentially going to be doing more things with people's money, and like they do not trust him. Think about that, okay? Based on what we're seeing here, it looks like they have more trust in Thomas that he's not going to go off and do these things than they do for John Caroni. So if anyone is going to end up taking the fall, based on what I'm seeing, it looks like it's more likely that John Caroni is going to take a fall than Thomas Smith. Now, John Caroni compared to Kyle Nagy, I don't know really with what's going on with that, but obviously it doesn't look good if Kyle's on the run. So let me know what you guys think about this down in the comments below. That's what I got for you in this video. I do have another video that I'm going to be doing, which goes over the events that are being reported that took place when John Caroni went into court. So there's a series of events that took place. Look out for that in another video here today. And again, you guys can join my Telegram group. Excuse me. You guys can join my Telegram group. There's a link to that down in the description below. Team Crypto Atlas. Don't forget to hit subscribe, hit the thumbs up, like button. God bless. Be safe, guys. Thank you so much to my Patreon supporters. A double shout out thank you to WeLoveSafeMoon.com, Victor Vegas, SafeMoon Oz for being higher level patrons. Thank you to my YouTube members as well. And we'll see you in the next episode.